Welcome to this webinar. We're going to be talking about requisitions or recs today from Coupa, and we're going to be talking a little bit how you can do these incredibly different, how you can review them, how you can hand over requisitions and go and get a ton of savings, compete them, and do this all autonomously. My name's Daniel Barnes. I'm going to be sort of the host of this webinar session. I used to be a practitioner in procurement, supply chains. I spent about just under a decade all across that space, mainly working in defense organizations across indirect and direct procurement. So a lot of what we're talking about today are pains that I encountered, especially really early on when I was a buyer, and pretty much my life revolved around checking requisitions and going to do an RFQ. RFIs to figure out who the hell could actually help me do those things. I'm joined by Phil Foty today. He is our senior solution consultant here at Pactum. Phil, do you want to say anything before we get started?
Yeah, no, I'll introduce a few things when I get started. But yes, Phil Foty, based here in Half Moon Bay, just below San Francisco in California. Been in procurement tech for 25 years, and great to be with you all today.
Yes, and Phil's going to show a little bit of Pactum's product, and you're in incredibly safe hands. Phil is an absolute pro. So before we kind of dive into the demo and everything, I just kind of want to talk to you about like what Pactum is, if you don't know who we are, or you're maybe you only know about us from like autonomous negotiations, because that's where like most people kind of come to us knowing about it. But in short, Pactum does a whole range of different things. We build AI agents that work with real authority. They can check, align, negotiate, and we organize them around three main areas. So this is indirect procurement, supplier management, and direct procurement. And we are going to be really focused on indirect procurement today, upstream activities around that intake requisition phase, and just trying to show you like an incredible new way to check all of your requisitions, which doesn't require you going through line by line, policy by policy to get all of this. And we're going to be showing you natively within Coupa, because that's a huge value prop, so you don't have to like rip out and change everything you're doing today. We tend to hear like similar things from people that we're talking to, whether we're at an event or people coming to us looking for solutions around this, or even our existing customers today, which is when it comes to requisitions, it's really hard to know like what actually happens around requisitions, or even like how long it takes to review them, how many, because all of this work happens in disparate places. It's happening in emails, it's happening in spreadsheets, handoff between people, Teams, Slack. It's often quite chaotic. For some people, they outsource this work to BPOs, and even then, like the depth of checks are never quite there, and they're paying normally quite a large amount of money for these services. And when something goes wrong on these checks, like maybe there's the wrong category code, or like some details are missing, or like it's an off-contract spend, most of the time these things get kind of ignored because we just don't have the capacity to actually sit there, review them, make all the changes, improvements, and do whatever we're needed. And it becomes a problem downstream. It often becomes a problem for someone negotiating a deal with someone in your finance team who is trying to reconcile everything at month's end or year end. And these are just things that can be avoided very quickly. And we also lose a lot of opportunity to go and do things better, to get savings, to find new lines of supply. And that cost of opportunity is a real one. So the cost name plainly is like we either slow down everything to make sure everything's checked before we proceed to RFI, RFQ, go get the PO in place, and we get called a blocker by the entire org, or we blitz everything through, we outsource the services, but we get like this mixed level of policy application depending on who reviewed it or the level of services that you've contracted for externally. And what we're going to be talking about today is how you can address that problem upfront through alignment, which is doing all of these checks in an autonomous fashion with AI agents. And I love this. I'm incredibly excited by it. Yeah, I think it solves a real world problem for so many people in procurement. I talk to procurement people every single day, and I know that they just have issues like this every single place, whether it's a massive pharma company, a huge manufacturer, or even just in like finance. Like these are still real issues that everyone faces. Now, just some logistics before we dive into a couple other bits here. You can ask questions as we're going through this. There is Q&A available. We'll be getting to that right at the end. There's about 5 minutes or so for Q&A, but if you ask questions, you can do that by adding a question via the Q&A feature. I'll be keeping an eye on that. Also have the expertise of Phil to help me answer any questions that I can't personally help you with. Phil is far better at showing and talking about the product than I am, and we've got you covered there as well. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more about some of the value that we can provide and how we can help here. And Phil's going to really do the job to bring this to life for you. And we're going to get to that very quickly because so many of you already use a system like Coupa. Maybe it's SAP Ariba, but like we're focused a bit more on Coupa here. And we're not asking you to reimagine everything you're doing there. Like you have your requisitions in there, you have your approval processes in there, and Pactum just slots in, works almost in the background, it feels like, but it's really doing magical things for you. And the 5 things that we see it doing every single time for our customers who have deployed alignment agents in their business are the following. Like, first off, speed. Requisition reviews, I think conservatively could take someone a couple hours, maybe 3 hours to do, maybe more. But that's normally spread out over a couple of days. Like they're doing certain bits and you have this lapse time. The alignment agent can do these checks in seconds, and some internal data that I saw probably within my first few weeks of being here, which was only last month, was 48 seconds to do an alignment agent review on a single requisition. And that was with like 70 to 90 different policies being checked, because the scale of checks typically for most enterprises is huge. So speed is a massive value point here. Then we move on to productivity. So your buyers, your procurement people can focus on exceptions and strategies and not fixing all of these errors. Like AI agents can do this work so much faster, so much easier for them to do it. And we can, as humans, focus on far more exciting things. And for the first time, you'll have visibility. You'll have visibility of every single requisition, every deviation, every blocking point that maybe your policies are enforcing with your suppliers, where something doesn't quite work for a certain category or commodity or type of purchase. And I think that's incredibly exciting, especially for center of excellences who are always thinking about like, how do we make improvements for the entire procurement org, the function, or in certain geographies. Next, like real obvious one, compliance, like making sure that every single requisition is compliant with the way in which you want to go and procure things, or the way in which your organization wants to interact with its supply base. I think that's just getting so much more awareness now. CPOs, procurement teams over the last few years have started to care more and more about this and not just focused on savings, digital transformation, AI transformation. They really do care about these things as well. And then the last one, savings. It would be amiss of me not to talk about savings. We, as procurement people, like we really do care about savings. We should care about savings, and the opportunity to check requisitions and say like, hey, actually at this value for this category, for this type of purchase, like we would normally go and look at our approved supplier list and try and compete this, create some competitive tensions, and go and try and get some savings or some better terms or make some sort of improvement. And the great thing is Pactum gets to do that for you autonomously. And it's kind of wild to see. It's kind of hard to picture, but I still think of it as magic in some ways. So it's an incredibly exciting proposition. I'm going to hand over to Phil to start showing this off. So Phil, maybe if you can pull up your screen here, and I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to watch and be amazed by everything we can do here.
Okay, can you see my Sandlot training
We
quote
can.
and hear me? Okay, great. Thanks, Daniel.
Yes,
So
all
I'm
good.
going to bring the 5 value points and everything that Daniel just summed up to life over the next 12 to 15 minutes, and then we'll leave some time for questions. But I'm starting my day that like most buyers would start it. I've got a quote in hand for a new AI project from a single supplier that I work with. And obviously, since we're using Coupa here in my fictitious company, I'm now in Coupa where I actually filled out that requisition. So I've got 4 line items for the 4 different AI services. We'll talk about and follow this rec through its lifespan, and I'll do some time traveling just for the purposes of time here. We'll talk about the workflow and the approvals, but I purposely left some things out here. So I did not attach that quote to the top of the rec. I filled in what I thought were the proper commodity codes and such. And what I'm going to do is take this new requisition and just submit it for approval. That was rec number 24042. Once this gets submitted and we click back into it, what's going to happen is we are going to pass this over to the alignment agent. So 24042 does not exist here yet in my alignment agent queue, but now it does. So I'm actually going to click into this. So we are in Pactum now. So Coupa, and we'll talk about the handoffs and the workflow. But Coupa passed this rec over, not to a buy desk. And notice, I don't know if you caught it, but there were no humans in that loop. We just passed this rec to the Pactum alignment agent. And what we're doing is running through our policies. And I was supposed to attach the quote, but you'll notice the kinds of checks that we had a few seconds ago were about 15 or 20. We whittled this down to 5. I can't run some of the checks. In fact, this rec may come back to me because the quote wasn't attached. So that's one of our policies that we applied to that requisition. Another one was the category may not have matched. And it's telling me one of the line items for this AI project, I either on purpose, because it was the first one in the list, or maybe by accident chose CPG. And it's telling me that this line item could be cause for a rejection. And we'll talk about workflow in a minute. But when Daniel talked about having 90 policies here, all of this is under control. We'll come to you with a standard policy library, but this can be your requisition. And I don't know if you just saw that status change up on top, but from the time
Yes.
that I pushed go, let me refresh this real quickly, to the time that this alignment agent checked the rec, that was 78 seconds. And it ran through all of the policies. It also gave me what the problem was. And if I really needed to see the log of what it was thinking, I get the agent's reasoning here. So there's an entire audit trail of what happened. But if we go back to the requisition, we can see that the alignment agent took control of this rec. It ran through the checks. And by the way, those checks could be a lot longer than those 5. You'll notice something like a price may have been not only not matching the quote document, but Pactum also has the ability to auto fix it. So if we think about all of the things that we just saw, I submitted a rec, it ran through the checks, told me what the problems were, tried to not only keep this rec within compliance and have good data hygiene, but to Daniel's point, maybe we actually caught something that was on a contract or should be coming from a catalog item. So now we're talking about preventing leakage and driving some savings just by doing this check. And by the way, if you look at the results here, what I can do with this requisition is reject it, I can approve it, or I can escalate it. So we're not only automating the checks, but we're automating the workflow actions. And we can actually affect what happens to this rec. And you'll notice for this demonstration, I only have the alignment agent in play and the negotiation agent in play once we find an opportunity that we may want to either negotiate with a single supplier or maybe turn this into a tactical sourcing event automatically. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there are no humans in the loop. But if you did need to escalate this to a team or a human, we've got that possible. Late breaking news, as of this morning, we just discovered that one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world just stripped this process away from their normal buy desk review, and now Pactum is automating the entire set of rec checks in their Coupa application. So they really did take humans out of the loop, and we are knocking that down from 2, 3, 4 days to try to meet their SLAs down to 48 seconds, 72 seconds, whatever the processing time was. So not only do we have the ability to control the workflow once we do the checks, we're going to come to you with a standard policy library. So typical contract, catalog, supplier, line item, quote document, data matches. All of those are checked. In fact, you can build upon those and implement your own policies. So something like, a rec in a certain region over 30K needs 3 bids and a buy. Someone typed that in English, kept a little extra detail here. They may have had the AI assistant help with building this, and then they may have grabbed a bunch of Coupa recs or maybe one Coupa rec and in real time tested that new policy against that requisition. So the requisition alignment agent not only performs the checks and drives the workflow, but you can make it your own, add your own policies, add your own rules on when those policies and for whom those policies get checked, and then use that to process the requisitions and on to their merry way, whether they need to get fixed by the requisitioner, fixed by a team, or Pactum is actually doing that fixing. Once those policies are implemented and we run those checks, then we can move on. And you'll notice this is a case where we approved the rec and moved it to the next step. In fact, I don't need to get into Pactum to see what was rejected and what was maybe one or two policy violations. I can actually see this in Coupa. So if I move down to the bottom of this, now we move forward in time once this was complete, I can see that Pactum recorded what the violations were in Coupa. We applied a report. So I actually get a PDF report of which ones failed and why, which ones passed. And then if I wanted to, I can actually move this on to the next step, which was I imported a requisition with these 4 line items into the Pactum negotiation agent. And what that's basically doing is having now, and for those that don't know Pactum, yes, we've got some really cool technology like I just showed in the alignment agent, but we've been helping customers save money and drive autonomous negotiations for 7 years. The procurement negotiation agent is one of those examples where we'll take data right out of Coupa. And probably a minute after this happened, I actually got an email as the buyer that said, hey, Phil, we need to review this requisition. It looks like Sandlot was the one that you loaded in and quoted, but we've got other suppliers in Coupa that you may want to source with. So we auto created basically 3 bids and a buy here. So I get the email that there's an opportunity. And then if we move into the negotiation agent, now we're in a place where, I've got the demand in here. Those 4 line items were sent over to Pactum from Coupa. But here's where Pactum is saying, you know what? You've got some preferred suppliers possibly that you do want to go to this project with to maybe get some quotes from, or I can manually pick. So Pactum made those suggested suppliers here, but I can also go into Coupa and manually pull in maybe a company that's actually one of the incumbents. They're actually doing work next door, so I want to include them in this project. So I actually took what was a Sandlot training services company only bid and basically expanded this to a tactical sourcing event. And we'll be able to run this now with those suppliers, because the next thing that's going to happen if I push the OK button here, because so I can have a human in the loop to process this negotiation. Now we're going to be sending emails out to the suppliers. And what we're seeing here is one of those new suppliers. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. New Supplier, we'd like to invite you to a sourcing event. Here is what to expect. Click on this button. Or for Sandlot, hey, Sandlot, we're pleased to inform you that you've been selected as a finalist. They didn't know they were a finalist in the sourcing event, but now we're putting this out to competition and we're confirming. So the first supplier doesn't have a quote yet. Second supplier did have a quote, but now they just click on that button. So if I now put my supplier hat on, we're actually in the supplier's inbox. And there's a simple button at the bottom of this where that supplier just clicks. And now we're brought into a conversation with our negotiation agent to now confirm that this is the bid that they submitted. And they would be brought into basically a competitive sourcing event. So all of the good parts of a reverse auction with some competitive nature there and competitive visibility, all of the good parts of a typical AI agent, one click button to go into to a bid. So we've combined all that into a very quick and frictionless sourcing event for the suppliers to act on. That second supplier that was added needs to quote this business. So they're brought into a place, and of course, for time purposes, I kind of completed this beforehand. They're here with a notification of what the forced services were. That statement of work, which by the way, I actually had Pactum build for me. If I go back into the negotiation agent, there was a statement of work that did not exist. Pactum actually developed this statement of work and then included that on this negotiation as part of the negotiation agent. And what happened was it asked, hey, would you like to provide a quote for this? This second vendor provided a quote, and we immediately took that, confirmed it, and then took what we have been doing for 7 years, which is try to use negotiation intelligence, which, by the way, this is not an LLM doing this. This is not ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude coming up with this. This is our own proprietary negotiation strategy and intelligence, a little bit of game theory, a little bit of reverse auction. You'll notice the competitive slider on the right that will basically be one of those levers that the supplier can react to. If they did agree to this price, which of course no supplier would, we're starting off with pretty aggressive anchor offers. We'll use the competition as one of those drivers. But what we're doing here and what we have always called a mezzo or a set of multiple equivalent simultaneous offers is using these competitive levers, not only just price. This is not just about haggling on line item or service pricing. We're actually combining in other levers like payment terms and discounts alongside the competition to drive this. And of course, the supplier said, no, that's a little too rich for my blood. We asked why, and I said already discounted. And then we're brought to a place where I may actually counter or pick one of those and then complete the negotiation and eventually come to a place where we're going to try one more time. Maybe you don't want to give us a 25% discount. Maybe we'll give us a 15% discount. And then the supplier would actually settle on one of those, provide the new quote, and we would call this a complete negotiation. So if all the suppliers come in and finish that, and again, we're going to try to drive them to be as competitive as possible and drive discounts up and payment terms down and get the best deal possible, we're brought back into Pactum, where I now have the ability to see one, not only the baseline, maybe that was Sandlot's bid, and the winner may be AI Everything or one of the other suppliers that we do work with in Coupa, but I have the ability to run a normal bid analysis, see what the line item differences were, and claim a winner. Now, we don't automate the award here. We probably will in the future, but this is one of the places where a human could be in the loop to say, okay, I do want to start the negotiation with these 3 or 4 vendors. I do want to complete the negotiation and choose this one as a winner, and then use Pactum to actually update Coupa. So now I fast forward in time, we're back on one of these requisitions where I not only ran the rec checks, decided to move it to the next step. There was no human on the Coupa workflow. I did okay and run that with the negotiation agent. And if we follow the audit trail down below, like we saw before, we checked the rec, we loaded that into Pactum. Pactum said, hey, we found some new suppliers. We ran the bid, and we actually awarded the business to a new supplier. So the original supplier was AI Everything. The new supplier is Everything World. And if we look up top, this rec is actually going to Everything World. And it became a PO with the new pricing and the new supplier. Now imagine running hundreds or thousands of recs through the alignment agent, finding opportunities to either negotiate with a single supplier or turn these non-catalog ad hoc recs in the middle of the tail, again, by the hundreds into competitive sourcing events, automate the competitive sourcing event, and then do the round trip back into Coupa. This is where you start to get the value that Daniel talked about before, whether it's time to meet your SLAs, whether you can redeploy those buy desk resources to more strategic sourcing and better projects and supplier enablement and happiness, or just get pure savings and knock, in this case, maybe 10K off of a 40K AI project. Again, multiply that by 100, and that's where you start to get not only the savings, but visibility. So of course, we've got dashboards and reporting. I can see the hundreds of recs that I have processed, and maybe even more importantly, run a continuous improvement shop. Where are most of the failures? What do we need to fix in Coupa or Ariba? What do we need to tweak in the Pactum policy library? What is our increasing pass and lower failure rate? And most importantly, what are we passing on to the negotiation agent to run savings? How many negotiations are we running? What's our engagement like? What's the supplier feedback like? we're running continuous improvement shops on this new automated and autonomous rec checking and negotiation world. And that was, again, a very quick glimpse into how to squeeze value out of Pactum for both optimizing your requisitions and negotiating those recs and sourcing events all autonomously, but of course with your control. Daniel, that's all I had for now.
That's
I'm going
fantastic.
to pass it back to you, if that's okay, and stop sharing.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm still amazed every time I get to watch a demo, especially when it's live, of what we do here at Pactum, because I've just sat through so many of these pain points as a practitioner in the past, and my God, I was hoping for a product like this at some point to come along. We did actually have a question, Phil, that came in whilst you were quite early on, and we had the alignment agent doing the rec. So Joaquin asked, can agents update PR fields or only reject them for the stakeholder to then like have to go in and manually update? So it's more a question of like what can the alignment agent actually do within that original requisition within Coupa? Can it make updates itself, or is it just going to tell you, hey, on one of those policy checks that you showed with inside of Pactum, like, oh, this was wrong. Now you go do it. That was the question.
Yeah. Yeah, and it varies by customer. So the controls that we provide is one, find the reasons to reject it and send it back to the requisitioner to fix. Two, escalate it and pass it on to someone else to maybe do the fixing. Or three, for certain line level fields, Pactum can do the auto fix. So things like price, unit of measure, commodity codes, we can actually do the auto fixing there and then move it on its merry way. So if a rec only had, let's say, unit of measure matching and commodity code issues, Pactum can fix it and move it on, and no one at the customer has to touch it.
Yeah, great, great answer there. And it's kind of interesting, right? Like some people really still want their team to be very heavily involved and have the final change as well, and we can really cater to everyone there. We actually just had another question there. Joaquin said, "Thank you." We've just had a question come in from Hector, and Hector asked, "Can you share more perspective on how the agent assigns the business to the selected supplier? Are these processes where the human supervisor approves?" So I think we're talking about when we go out to find new suppliers to go and actually bid the the requisition.
Yeah. So three or so levels of control. So one, we can codify some of that on the Pactum side. So if this spend amount in this region, maybe go to these suppliers. Two, I've got the manual control on the negotiation agent to cherry pick suppliers out of Coupa, maybe, or invite new suppliers that we haven't done business with. Or three, on the Coupa side, you may have some workflow that drives different approvals to different suppliers and maybe even some codification on who has certain preferred suppliers. And again, that would be us reading the Coupa data on how you're trying to map. Maybe it's by content group, or maybe it's by region or spend amount on which suppliers we may use. The one thing I didn't do when I first started was introduce myself. I spent 6 years at Ariba early on. I spent 9 years at Coupa. So there are several places in Coupa where you can do some of that control. And if it's in Coupa, most likely we will read that as we're checking and building the policies. Hector, I hope that helped.
Yeah, no, Phil, I really do appreciate that. Like, I just think for so many people, like what we're showing is it's still so new, and it's one of the main reasons I wanted to join Pactum, because they've always been so far ahead of everyone else in the procurement tech market, and just getting to watch you there at work and show how all of this works. And I think the real value is when you start piecing all of this together, it really gives you a new operator model for how you do procurement in this autonomous fashion. So. I think it's incredible. I'm just seeing if Hector had a follow-up. I think we're good for now. I'll give him like 10 more seconds or so just to see. Phil, was there anything else that you, as you were going through, you thought maybe I should show something else? Maybe I just had one thought, which is around the policy side of things, which is like we do have customers today managing just exclusively all their procurement policies inside of our alignment agent capability, where it's like for me in the old world, like we literally used to print policies off and have them sat like on our pods in the offices or in a SharePoint, and that was
Yeah,
wild.
yeah. I mean, if it's a loose leaf with paper in it, if it's a document, that actually could be read by the AI assistant in building those new policies. So that would be an automated way for us to, actually append your own policies to our, standard out of the box policy library. The other thing that I do want to mention, and this is kind of in testing right now, and we obviously didn't think of this, the customers came to us with more pain points. If we can check recs like this, why not check sourcing events? Why not check invoices? Why not check all the objects flowing through the source to pay
The
flow?
contracts, right, as well. Like the options are
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah. And if we could get rid of the problems, then we can actually optimize the entire flow. And we're actually making Coupa and Ariba better
Yeah.
by bolting on these agents to the process. So yeah, look forward to more stuff from Pactum.
Yeah, amazing, Phil. I just want to say thank you, Phil, for you demoing. It's wonderful to watch, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who spent time with us today. It's always wonderful. We will follow up after this webinar. We'll send you a copy of the recording. We might send you a couple other bits just over the next week or so, just to show you a little bit more around alignment agent. But if you are interested in seeing more, please let us know. We will absolutely reach out, and hopefully we can get Phil showing you a little bit more one-to-one. But thanks everyone for joining. And yeah, we'll see you soon. We'll be doing these every single month now. But goodbye.
Thanks, team.